Like, you can only go so far with what you've been tracking.
Exactly. I just found something about manufacturing
这个
and where
没有人
manufacturing
回
is hot, so I'm gonna
我主要
stay
想不起那
invested
作业
in,
都是啥，不知道想不到我
warehousing.
就说，我要
Yeah,
是能
mine
想
was
起来
like
都有
I
几
was
部
looking
分
at
的
like
话，
the
我就说我负
manufacturing
责哪部
purchaser
但我
index
一
or
点印
something.
象都
Exactly,
没有，
the
It's been
就是
going,
干
PMI,
嘛
I think.
it's been going down.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, this is going down, but people are still optimistic, so don't invest in manufacturing, but
我
invest
现在
in
连你选
distribution
的
and
那个
warehousing.
那个 Seven
Which
Brilliant
is like
那
basically
楼
like the story of everyone. That's pretty much what everyone said during the last
And I
process.
know Blackstone recently just invested a bunch in warehouses.
那你咋不
So
看
I'm just gonna go
那
with
那个
that.
作业都几个部分我都忘了。
I feel like warehouses are great. We're always going to do like transport goods. That's all like growing, and somehow if warehousing fell off the face of the earth,
这
it's
个
like
你再没印象
the most flexible asset type.
Oh,
There's
I
no
know.
columns, so you
Very
really
easy
need
to
to put it
read.
into manufacturing or
Don't
something. You
follow
can do
the
that
rule.
very easily.
Very true.
How about the assignment for next week? Did you start it?
No,
No?
I started it like an hour ago,
I mean,
which is like
I did the template.
I made the template and I downloaded it. Like I saved a bunch of files into a folder.
But I don't understand where she said, look back up, that, you know, back it up with some reading that we.
Like I feel like it's mostly like go to like find one of those things where it's like retail expected return is like 8 to 10%, or like very high level background. Like find a report from CBRE that like is like rents are projected to fall 2% next year. And you can be like, okay, like retail sucks because of the rise of e-commerce, and this report says this.
So we're investing
less in retail and more, and here like
Okay.
very high level,
Yeah,
like
like-
secondary cities are projected to grow, so it's like we're going to invest in the U.S. It's very high level.
Okay.
Nothing in depth, yeah. Very
That's
macro.
what I interpreted.
Alright.
I pulled a bunch of brokerage reports, and I feel like you could probably get 95% of the background information you need out of there, and then the other 5% you can just like make up on the spot when you're talking to them.
And she got me confused
还
when
是
she
自
said,
己搁这
they
回
want a
这
higher
我
return
觉得我一部
portfolio,
分都
so
在
it's
我刚才
not
找的资料拿
core.
给你看。
And I don't know what she's, you know.
我觉得
I
特
got
强。
I got a little bit
大概
confused too when I was
都是
looking at it because it was
Yeah.
showing like the returns for office, and it was like
我
office
今儿
returns
下
like
午研
14 to
究了一下，
18%.
我没明白它到底
in
是
the
能
sheet
干
she
啥。
gave us, but it's like, where are you getting 14% for like urban office in the U.S.? And then like, where am I going?
Her numbers
是啊，
didn't
我
make
感觉也
sense.
是。
I think it was just it was more so just like a illustrative thing than like
Yeah,
numbers that are
then
actually meant
actually,
to,
yeah.
甚至100多
to make sense.
花半年的时间去搞这个这个。
那肯定。
She also seems like she's got a teacher. It's not like don't do exactly this. Like you could do something completely different as long as it made sense. You
Mhm.
do
If you
well.
can make some sense out of it, like, I think that's what she's looking for.
How's your presentation going for
Tomorrow?
For tomorrow, yeah.
Fine. Ish.
Have you started the paper?
No.
Okay.
I don't think anyone has, to be honest. I feel like it's gonna be one of those things. Like everyone I've talked to, well, a lot of people haven't started their presentation level on the paper.
Yeah.
My presentation is mostly like my idea, background research, like what I've started to do, like my methodology and what I plan on doing, but I don't have any results yet.
Right. That makes sense.
Austin, are you presenting more?
Yeah. Are you?
Yeah.
How's yours going?
Started this morning.
You got time.
Yeah. a
It's
little
only
bit.
like what, 10 minutes or something?
Yeah, we'll take some questions afterwards. I feel like it'll be. I feel like tomorrow is like more so just to make sure you're not on the total wrong track, and he can like kind of, if he can sense that
Sway
you don't know
that
what you're doing, he
quick, yeah.
can send you feedback and be like, you need to do this, or this doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
Right.
I feel like he's done it
Earlier.
before where he gets a paper like the second week of December and it makes no sense. It's too late to do anything with it.
Yeah. I agree.
In a way, it's good that he's-
Teacher or student?
We have to do an initial presentation on our final project, and I was like, I feel like it's just a way for one of our professors to make sure people are on the right track because they haven't seen
That's
anything.
good.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, it's much. I'm glad that he's doing it in a way.
Yeah,
Like,
that's really good actually. It's a good idea. Okay. Is that okay?
看来老师并不认可。
This is like a. I don't know, it's a word that you use, right?
他的说
Percent anymore.
It's out there, yeah.
It's a full semester project that he hasn't seen yet, so I feel like he probably got a little like antsy making sure that people are
Yeah, you don't want to all of a sudden at the end, that's awful.
Yeah, or have someone do this, like come to you.
Who's the
Remember she
person?
said the guest
Manish,
lecture?
Sri Vistava.
Oh, everyone keeps
So
telling me
we
nothing.
don't need to do
Yeah,
that.
he's, I'm having him for a couple classes, he's good for us.
So I was thinking,
But yeah, I feel like he's had people come to him like a week before things are due at the end of the semester and haven't started things and the recipe for.
should just get it to the
Yeah, that's 50%. Another grade.
Yeah.
That's mine too.
That's all.
Something that they're supposed to. And
So we
Professor,
had
do we
guest
have a?
today.
Yes, I was just gonna ask.
Well, actually, he had canceled on me.
Ooh.
And then he was supposed to be, he was going to Zurich, and Lufthansa canceled the flights. So this morning, he's like,
Lucky
cancel,
us.
kind of like, yeah, they want to see you, not me. So, well, he's coming at 1:45. So we have a bit of time to just go over assignment.
That actually doesn't mean anything, I just was on the internet on my computer.
Oh, okay.
I just ignored it.
Okay. So,
各位，昨天知道我这电脑是从哪儿掉的吗？是在胸上掉的，还是在裆上掉的？
在裆那掉的，没多高，比这还低一点，因为你当时是这样的，就是弯着的。咋的了？摔坏了？
摔倒是没事，我怕有什么事，但一看硬盘啥也没事。没有，我看那个检测，那个数据都还在。主要是我贼他妈爱切东西。我上次那电脑，原来那电脑是那种机械硬盘，那是摔一下就差不多了。
I don't know which one it is, but one of them doesn't work.
It just threw me off.
这个还挺累的。
Jet lag.
It's like ridiculous.
The daylight savings 1
Or
hour.
maybe it's just with the whole pump.
Oh, wait. There it is.
这学期贼他妈快，不带这种还是4周。
对呀，天天没作业催的。
I'm right here. I was just looking. So I will send you guys. It's Financial Times.
我觉得
They do a
这个学期是我过得最快的。
fund management supplement every once in a while. So there were 2 articles. Haven't got a chance to read yet, but downturn in interest rates wreaks havoc across U.S. pension plans. Let's see what's going on there. I think it's to do with their actuarial rates because they have to forecast to meet the liabilities with the low discount rates. Imagine. And then the other one was alternative risk premium will be tested in the next downturn. It's everything we've been talking about. The risk premium for alternatives. So we'll see what they have to say. I'll send it out to you guys.
What's up, Jeff? How you doing?
I just saw this car. Somebody was wearing no shoes. So weird. I was in the elevator with this car.
Shoes?
Yeah, so weird. Like no socks. She walked me from the street.
Barefoot.
I took a picture.
今天一看头条
Literally barefoot.
万科云降薪40%。
I was shocked. She like walked in from the street and left me past. No shoes, no socks.
Okay.
It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Look at it. It was so weird. I didn't understand. I wanted to ask her about it, but I didn't know if that would be rude.
So
Read the thing.
let's just go over
Maybe it's
the
like-
assignment again. Make sure everybody's on the same page. So this is somewhat of a combination. Hi. We're going to wait to do you because someone is actually coming to as a guest speaker.
Okay.
Okay? So,
Okay, sure.
okay, great. Victor was going to present his friends.
Oh.
We'll do it another time. So, what this assignment is essentially, it seems simple, and it's not difficult, but you should be thinking about all the different parts of the puzzle what we've been speaking about in terms of creating a balanced portfolio. So, you'll be thinking about currency and interest rates and different types of leases in different parts of the world in terms of trying to think about balancing a portfolio. Because someone at any point in time can come to you if you're a portfolio manager of a real estate portfolio and ask you to slice and dice it based on a variety of different things based on what's happening in the marketplace. So if all of a sudden the interest rates start to make a big move, someone's going to want to understand how that's going to impact the values of the real estate. And that has, that has many different, if someone's really thinking about it, many different impacts in terms of whether it's what lease terms do you have, what the different currencies are that you have in the portfolio, all sorts of parts of the investment cycle that you should be thinking about in this. So while it's very simple and basic, anything that you want to do to back it up with other types of thoughts and approaches are obviously always welcome. So again, you have $250 million to invest. It's a higher returning strategy, so think about opportunistic. And you're going to create it for a, higher return strategy, but the tables are currently, that's right, I did it for a core portfolio, sorry, I did it for core portfolio, so ignore, my numbers are not the numbers to be used as much as just a samples and example, okay? And you're going to want to think about, again, we started, like, I think in the first session we got together, we spoke about correlations between and amongst countries. So something like that can come into play here. Go back to what I've distributed. You could use that, use the materials. There's one chart that we had showed correlations for currencies, another one for, I think, for real estate strategies and such. Also, be thinking about returns, thinking about where NCREIF is today. Remember, you are a US investor. Now you're being asked to look globally. So where are returns today in the US marketplace? You want to go back and look at NPI from NCREIF and see what's happening. And then again, also a very big component of this is where are the returns coming from? And again, that's going to be thinking about, do you think discount rates are really going to move in the next, whatever, year to 5 years, whatever term you want to think about? Because that's going to clearly have an impact here, okay? And we discussed that. It's probably the hardest concept here in terms of thinking about, and if you go onto NCREIF's website, it will always show you the returns broken down by income and appreciation. So you have an insight in terms of where the returns have been generated from. So use that as a foundation, and then think about, are you going to be able to get extra return based on your market that you're choosing, based on the movement in the macroeconomics, because all of a sudden there's a huge flow of capital pushing yields, pushing discount rates. So that's what we mean by economic indicator, something that's outside of the property itself and what you can do. There's something happening in the economy that's progressing the movement towards a different discount rate than from what you went into. So it's a going in versus a reversionary and what's happening in the capital markets during that time, okay? And so what you have to do ultimately, so next week what we will do is we get together, again, we'll sit around the table, and we will defend. You have to, some of you will put it up, put your portfolios up, and you'll have to defend how you got to where you got to. Okay? So it's you can add defense sheets behind this in terms of what your thinking was. Remember what I've been talking about, what I'm trying to get everyone to think about is how do you translate data into strategy? Okay? And that's really what we want to see that you've done here. Not just copy that there's, you know, this return, blah, 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 but how you thought through what that data meant. Here's a good hint. Also, go look at it. I know I told everyone to bring your the index trackers. We can talk about that. We'll see for the time. But if not now, we can do it next week too. Go back and look at, I think it's like sessions 2 or 3 that we did that have, LaSalle has like a data board of what economic indicators are showing, what they mean in different parts of the world, and how to use those for projecting the future. So that's what we've been talking about. We were talking about projecting into the future for us to be good magicians, essentially, but with data. But what does the data mean and how do you use it? So those kinds of boards that, like LaSalle did, shows you how to actually, what they look at. And then you need to think about what that data in that index is telling you. Okay?
You said wait, so LaSalle has data boards of indicators that help that teach you that tell you how to project.
Yes, it says like it was like he used the LEI, the leading economic indicator, which remember is the basket of a bunch of different economic indicators. And he says, I use that, essentially there's a chart that says I use that for forecasting the recession that could be coming in North America.
Okay.
So that's what you're using it for, to say what has happened from those, what are those numbers? I'm following it, not because I just like to follow things, but because it's going to inform me about something that's going to happen.
Got it.
So remember we looked at also the CMBS marketplace that had a huge crash right before the global financial crisis. Or, excuse me, they had you know done an exorbitant number of loans at that point in time. So and then all of a sudden they crashed. So it's indicators like that that say something's going to happen, and or something's out of the. What are we looking for? And I think, you know, thinking about in today's marketplace, in terms of putting together a portfolio like this, I'd be looking at that kind of information. Because it's you know, it depends who you read today, but a lot of people are saying crash, no crash, recession, no recession. You need to come up with your own opinion, and that will help you become a good investor. So, and then the rest you're thinking about too here are the asset classes of real estate, right? And how will this impact real estate? So, what's happening in the retail markets? I remember we looked around the world, crazily enough, it seemed like most of it was pretty consistent. There weren't that many outliers that where you could invest. Remember something, if you're going to start talking about Thailand in here, it might be a little bit of a hard defense. Why? So is there really a lot of institutional properties to be investing into Thailand? And do they have the governance that we've been discussing that's necessary in a country? Okay? Does that all make sense? And again, if you have any questions during the week as you're doing it, let me know. I'm around. Sort of. Okay. So don't, you know, this doesn't have to be, you know, 20, 25 pages. I'm not looking for that. I'm just looking for succinct, what your thinking was, how you got there, and put it out there. Yeah, see, I was working to, I didn't think you would be here, so I was putting two things together this afternoon. So these are some of the, you know, indicators.
We talked about this last week, but you said you're all right if it comes in a PowerPoint as long as you said, stands on itself. Like, so it kind of reads through, but
use PowerPoint. Don't give me like, you know.
Report.
Right. No. Right. That was second grader. Yeah. No. Use PowerPoint. It's easy. The reason I push PowerPoint, I love PowerPoint, it's that it forces you to be succinct. It forces you to say, what is the bullet? Don't put like paragraphs of words. What is the takeaway message? You will have someone looking at this. What is the message? And if you're making a presentation to someone, how many minutes is it up on the screen? 2-3 minutes or something like that? So you have to be really to the point of what is it that you're saying and what you want them to know. And that's what I like PowerPoint. It makes you do that. Pick it too long. Okay? All right, so let's see, so what time is it? Oh, we have 15 minutes, okay. No questions? All right, let me tell you about who's speaking as well. So it's David Tepperman, and David was, he was my client. He was an investment professional over at New York State Common, and New York State Common is, I think it's the second largest pension fund in the US in terms of assets under management. They have one of the most largest and sophisticated real estate portfolios in the country for a pension fund. They had a very fulsome staff of professionals investing into real estate. They used all the who's who of managers, both in fund products and what we call it separate accounts, which is a separate mandate. And he is going to be talking about one of their first forays into real estate overseas. And it was a huge, huge bet that he sort of led this charge, which was quite brave. And it was into self-storage in Europe. And it was a combination of both private and public markets that they accessed with a partner. As we've already said, you have to go into these markets with someone local, with a partner. So SureGuard was an existing operator that was already in place and doing a lot of investment in that area. And they needed capital to expand their platform. And that's when they tapped into New York State Common. So, and there were lots of ups and downs, and I'll tell you about that. He's also just going, and he's no longer there. He just changed jobs. He's now at, I think it's called Landmark. They do residential investing, and they're starting off this new platform to get more institutional capital in. And, but he, just having sat at New York State Common for, I don't know what it was, but probably over 10 years, he has very good insight into how these pension funds, how this capital works. So feel free to ask him any questions. He's very accessible and very, you'll see, just very, that's probably him. Comfortable guy. No, that's not him. Sorry, I'm here. So just ask away, because this is really an opportunity for you to understand how that investment mind and process works. And you don't always have that kind of opportunity to meet someone like that. So we only have a few, I was looking, we only have a few more classes actually. So sad. And so what I'm going to do also is I'm going to post the final project online. And again, that will also be in groups. And we'll talk about that. And I've dedicated a session just to go over that. Sort of to your point, you're another professor. Because I want you to get the most out of going through this process. And I think that's the best way to do that. So while I'm posting it early, and I'll post the teams, we still have a few more sessions and Thanksgiving and break and everything else in there, but I want you to start thinking about it. And it's essentially, it's a cash flow, I think I told you, of a development project in Shanghai that Citibank did. And so you'll need to actually do cash flow analysis for the end project. All right.
I had a question on the assignment. If you go back to the page that had the charts and the graphs, 2 up. I know the whole point of this is to have information and back up stuff. I just want to make sure I was understanding the chart flowed through here. So on the far right side of the chart where you said sector averages for income appreciation and economic indicators based on assets, was that just something you had found through research and those were numbers that were backed up, or was that calculated somehow in here? So for example, the income average on office was 78.8%. Was that just found through like a research report or something?
That's a good question. You don't need to go find that kind of detail as much as just
so
make a best guess in terms of how you think it's going to play out. Looking at, you can go look at something like, if like it's for Asia, ANREV, you know, some of the indices that show over the last number of years what the breakout was.
What was
and
that?
if you can't, ANREV, it's the Asian. It's anyway, if you can't find indices that show that, just
have some logic why you pick
numbers. Figure something out. Just make you thought about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's not like there's no magic answer.
Gotcha. As long as you can back it up.
Right.
So.
As long as you say this is why I think, because for the most part it's a mature. So let's talk it through for a second. It's a mature marketplace. Where do you think most of the return is coming from?
Most of the what?
Return.
Income and maybe economic indicators, but not appreciation.
Mostly income, right? Because it's you're buying it based on in-place income. And if you're at the height of a marketplace, I mean, that's not for all of this. Like maybe for emerging Asia, you'll have something different. But for like the U.S. as an example, you've already reached sort of a pinnacle. You're not expecting a lot more appreciation until you built in. So if you came and said, well, it's probably going to be 75–80% from income because the last 10 years have been sort of we're going in cap rates are 4–5%. We don't, and that relates to the Treasury bond, blah blah blah. So you don't expect that to be moving much. Does that make sense? So it's not, again, not exact numbers. And also, okay, so the subsectors and the geographic distributions, all of it is open to your discretion. Just because I put it there doesn't mean you should use it.
No, I was just reconfirming.
Yeah. So just you make your own choices. What you.
They're correlated, though, right? The data's correlated to the graphs.
Yeah. The graphs are the You can set it. You can actually, you know how to do it so it flows.
Yeah, I was having trouble thinking through it kind of logically, where it was like, for example, urban office, and it gave a range of 12 to 14% returns. And in my head, I was like, that doesn't necessarily make sense if you're looking at urban office in the U.S. versus certain parts of the world, right? Like you might have a different target range for returns for American office, or North American office or European office versus emerging market office.
Correct. Right. But then we've also seen that there's been a flattening of distinction.
As long as it's flexible, as long as you can back it up.
That's right. So, and then everything should wait out. And I think, you just need to really look at where rates, where returns have been. I gave you, remember you have that whole reference list that I put together at the beginning of the term. There's a lot in there. Go into those, the CBREs, the JLLs, all of that, Cushman's, and you see, and they have all those kinds of data that they track.
Is there like a particular company that does like training or webinars to go over the global market?
Oh, thank you, actually, Jessica. Tomorrow, JLL is having a global webinar. So when I get home tonight, I'll send it out to everybody. I don't know if anyone's available. They probably do it where you can, you don't have to do it in real time. But JLL does. And I don't know if CB does. Maybe. Okay. JLL definitely does. And you can access all their reports and everything. So just go online. They'll ask you to fill something out, but then it just automatically fill it, it's automatically things. So.
A question: if a pension fund decides to invest in a REIT, does that investment count as a stock investment or as a real estate investment?
So you can work for one of these guys already. That's their question. It's usually a battle. It typically falls under stock group, but not always. And what the stock guys will do is coordinate sometimes with the direct real estate people. It is a stock at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, but I've seen it both ways. It depends. You can ask Dave when it comes up. Good question for him. He remembers. I'm sorry, Dad.
Is it better to have it in an asset
Is what
instead of a stock?
is what better?
I guess the structure, the deal structure, is it better to have it in a real estate asset investment or stock? Including stock?
Well, okay, so if you're buying a share
Yeah.
of Brookfield, do you have any opportunity, what are you doing? What are you doing? How do you go buy that share?
You want to buy it?
Find a broker.
Stock exchange.
Right, stock exchange, you go to a broker and you buy a share.
Robinhood.
So you have no, go back to the first lesson we talked about, the distinctions between public and private in terms of the benefits and the downfalls. So what are some of the benefits of owning real estate versus a stock?
The appreciation and the.
Well,
and
I look at the appreciation. If the real estate is a real estate, you're buying a share of a company that owns the real estate.
less volatility.
Exactly. Also, if you're owning the real estate, you can then structure, potentially, how you own the real estate and what that looks like. Versus if you're buying a share, you're one of millions of people buying those shares, you have no say in anything. And you're getting volatility, and you have the liquidity because you're going to sell the share, but you have a lot of volatility, and you don't have any say in what that structure looks like in terms of that ownership. And then we looked at also the correlations and the lack of correlations between the REIT market and the actual real estate ownership marketplace too. So,
Like it's better diversifier than a stock than equity potentially for a big fund.
yeah, it's been shown it's not as correlated. We can go over this again. We should. There's a lack of correlation, or not as much of a correlation as you would think between real estate and REITs in terms of returns and such. But the real estate market itself, the private market, has done a lot better in most instances.
Well, isn't it kind of is what you're getting? Much of what you're getting at, like REITs are more responsive to the effects of the overall market because it's kind of that sense when the market's going down, people seller prices go down, whereas real estate is not as reactive, so the impacts aren't as bad, which is why the private stuff is better
Exactly.
affected.
It takes a lot longer to the returns to filter into the real estate because it's such a solid. How frequently buying and selling buildings. But it's a very different. They're two different worlds. I see them entirely separate in this thing. But look, it's all based on real estate. The other thing is, we looked at what's factored in these REITs. It's not a pure play necessarily. So if you want to buy, if you like to buy something like Prologis, so that's really a very strong just industrial REIT. But there are many REITs that we buy that have lots of different things in it that we never consider real estate, such as maybe a construction company or cement company, or it's packaged into that in somehow, some way. So you have to look at what exactly is in that too. It's not necessarily as pure as you might think it is in terms of buying versus buying a piece of real estate. Just looking to buy a piece of real estate for the returns. So it's very different.
I mean, since you're speaking on REITs again, what we say on Simon Properties as a REIT, like they're in a struggling struggling a little sector of retail real estate, and they managed to do exceptionally well. Overseeing the latest retail trends Simon Property Group still remains to stay at the top or stay strong.
So what's your question?
Comments?
Comment, basically.
What's that?
Comment
Comment?
/ question. Yeah, I mean, how do they manage to? I mean.
Well, you have to look at their assets. It's a whole different thing. Brookfield also bought. GLP. No, it's you're close. It's anyway, they bought a competitor to Simon. So there are certain regional malls that are major regional malls that are just always going to do well no matter what. So what happens is everybody dumps this whole conversation of retail into like every mall, and that's just not true. So Simon and the other one have a much more choice portfolio, so they've done well. And then you look at also there's different subsectors in retail, drugstores particularly have not done well. So who's been influenced or impacted by the internet? Who's not? So, but if you look at just like Simon, they put together a very Class A major mall portfolio, whereas a lot of others have these secondary and tertiary kinds of malls.
I think it's like kind of the popular narrative in this, like in the real estate industry and just generally how badly retail is doing, but I think it's very kind of like dumbbell, barbell, if you will. Like the guys who are doing well are doing really well because they kind of have assets that are appropriate in today's retail market, whether that be kind of more urban formats or kind of click and collect type stuff, or they're not these kind of second or third tier malls that were anchored by Sears and by whoever. So I think the really good stuff is doing well. It's just the guys who either adjusted right or bought right who have the right strategy, and that's not all that different than a lot of other asset classes. It's all about making sure the strategy applies. And likewise, if we just looked at the retail REIT index that has underperformed everything, you might say, I'm going to stay away from retail entirely, but maybe that's not actually what you need to do. You need to look at which retail is doing well and why, and invest in that retail, because maybe there's undervalued to a certain extent.
Exactly, right, and that you can use that in here. And so in that kind of instance, then you would be saying, you know what, there would be some economic indicator movement for retail potentially, because right now you can get it at a real discount, possibly. So that's where something like that would come in to make a difference in your portfolio. It's also the demographics. So if you're buying a mall that's in a struggling, I mean, that's the most key thing in malls, in shopping centers, are demographics that we've talked about a lot. So that's where it really makes a big difference in terms of where these properties are situated. I mean, there's huge companies that's all they do. They look at how many cars drive by, and the per capita income and disposable income, what they're spending it on, and on and on and on.
So would that still give Simon Property Group a risk in an additional risk to have Simon Property REIT stock in your portfolio? Are you either be it stock or real estate? Will it still be considered a risk-adjusted rate that we get for considering the whole retail REIT is on the downward trend, and Simon Property Group still does well? So how are we trying to value Simon Property Group within that retail space?
Well, that's a very big question. It's all, it depends on how you're looking, what are you comparing it to, and when you bought it. I mean, it's hard to just say there's no go buy Simon REIT or sell. It's more a matter of taking a look. I don't know what's in their portfolio other than years ago I looked at it, it's a very strong portfolio, but it's hard to say now what's there and what their funds from operation are, and there's so many different works there. Go look at their 10K, and you'll be able to then see where their income is coming from, where the returns are, how they're doing, any major sales. Also, what are they planning on doing over the next? Are they taking over other properties? What's their strategy? Let me just see here. So, anyway, let me go see if I can find them for us. downstairs and see if I can get one, and then I'll be back.
被动啥意思？
Oh, you did start?
手得下。
Oh, okay. I haven't either. I haven't been into too much. So
Because
focus on that. Yeah, definitely start working on it by
I don't know how it is.
那你都花啥呢？一个月花他妈10万人民币。
This definitely got me interested.
我一个月花1
For
万。
sure, for sure. Yeah, we'll set something up.
我一个月也得花1万，差不多。
The daylight saving?
啊，你一个月自己花1万。
It's got me
那你花的
interested.
也，你是算房租，不算房租，你对房租也算不上，算房租1万也不够啊。就平时吃穿，
I knew there's another one.
那你花的还挺多。我主要是给女朋友花，我们俩一起。
Where we
Also
find
seems
the
really
Blueprint?
random that
Do you know where we
it's
found
Blueprint
the
花少，
Blueprint
花1000
for the next
I
project?
think obviously we've done that. I
I don't know about you, but-
Like, kind of unrelated to the everything we learned in the first year project.
Yeah, and it's like
是买包儿买衣服。
or something.
I think-
Yeah,
Has she
他2次逛街花
Has she given out what groups are going to be in for the next project?
Huh?
Has she given out the groups for next project?
Oh, she said she's gonna post it, I think.
For the fourth project or this
For
project?
the,
For the final.
For this project?
this one, this one.
Yeah, she has.
Where is it?
It's, I have it right here.
I can't wait to see the result.
You were Jessica.
We're together. Where are you guys seeing that?
It's like I didn't even know what she made. It's like a TXT file.
The hell is that?
Like
Oh,
it's
a
like
TX oh, okay.
like one of those
Yeah.
files like from like a Windows 95.
Damn.
Yeah, like that's what it looks like.
Zoomed in.
I didn't even know how you can make that, to be honest.
Then why doesn't it work on you?
Damn. Interesting.
You gotta be delicate. Like, you gotta be smooth. Gotta be smooth operator. That's maxed out. Or I've locked the zoom on
Oh,
this.
you locked it.
I don't think you need to wipe the screen.
What?
Lots of fingerprints.
Yeah, thanks to you. Yeah, this is what you're gonna open. This is what you're gonna open.
我这儿有个什么 CBRE Global 这个，我给你发过吗？你可以发给我。
Like this.
天天看看他的反应，他要说是什么玩意儿，我就告诉你别用那个。就是在网上找的。
Steal supplements.
Like see something.
等晚上回家再给怕他，怕他
They have
嫌弃。
another,
You're gonna get jacked. Seriously.
they have another fold.
It's amazing. So how long are you guessing?
30.
哥，你身边有人读二硕吗？
But how? No.
我可不他妈读，你身边有人读二硕吗？
He's a doctor.
身边
He's asking
啊，就读第2次硕。
He said,
我就是第一。
as small as the cycle.
Sure.
Because I'll have to leave right after.
Yeah, it's fine.
How many?
Pills?
Yeah.
200. 400 mg. 200. 300 mg.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good luck.
You can sit here.
That's
No, don't worry. You have a test. So, as I was telling everybody, David, I've been in here